If you've ever had a horse raise its head when you go to put the bridle on, that is pole resistance. And when you put pressure on the pole to teach the horse to lower its head, then you're asking the horse to soften to that pole resistance. A horse can do that under saddle too, where you make contact with the bit and the horse feels that contact in the pole, and they push their ears up against that pressure. It's no different than a horse that's resistant to steering left and right, and you working on softening the horse's face to going left and right. You also have to soften the horse's pole so that the head doesn't push up when you pick your hand up. When the head goes up when you pick your hand up, what happens? The horse inverts its back and pushes down with its front feet and ends up traveling really heavy on its front end, disengages the back end, and the horse ends up having issues doing maneuvers correctly. Here I'm working GG with a gag bit, and gag bits are one of the ways that I use to work on that pole resistance. The bit is not attached to the bridle. The bit slides up and down in the bridle, and I have the reins in my hand, and they basically go through the rings on the bit and then up and make contact across the pole and then back down to my hand on the other side. So when I lift my hands up, the only pressure, or 90% of the pressure that the horse feels, is at the pole. And that way I'm able to work just that pole resistance, basically the same way that you would work it if you were standing on the ground asking the horse to lower its head to put the bridle on. Now I'm putting basically that pressure in the same place with the bridle to teach her to lower her head. I'm not really wanting to get any particular headset. What I am looking for is when I pick my hands up, the head don't go up. The resistance is gone. If you start trying to put the head down and artificially lower it, then you end up with different problems that make it so that the horse can't use its body correctly. So you need the horse to use its body correctly without resistance in the pole, just like without resistance in your hand side to side. And I recently did a video and posted it on Patreon. That's where I post most of my in-depth training videos specifically on this. And I go and I talk about the bridle, I talk about how I'm using my hands, how I'm using my legs to make this happen with GG. I worked GG twice in the gag bit that you just saw in that video, and then I went back to the leverage bit that I had been working her in and talked about the improvements, where there was improvement, where there needs to be more improvement, and how that gag bit helped her and in her stops and in her spins, and helped her carry herself more correctly. She still has more work to do in that gag bit, and I'll be working it in some other ways too. And if you're interested in seeing GG and learning about how I use the gag bit to work that specific problem, you can check out that video on Patreon. And if you don't want to become a Patreon member, you can purchase just that video. On Patreon is where I post the more in-depth training videos, and that is the type of videos that I post on Patreon. So if you're interested, you might want to check those out. Here I'm riding her around in the leverage bit. This is her first ride after working her in that gag bit. And I had lots of improvement. You kind of watch her head go up and down. There's still room for improvement, but after just 2 sessions, there was noticeable improvement. And it all has to do with the piece of tack that I used at the right time, using it in the right way, and riding the right way. There's any one miracle piece of tack. Every piece of tack has a purpose and needs to be used correctly. You can take that same piece of tack, that same gag bit, and do a lot of damage, or you can use it incorrectly and not accomplish what it's intended to be used for. And that's with any piece of tack. And there's every piece of tack has a purpose. And if you want to learn how that bit is used and what its purpose is, I talk about that pretty in depth in that video on Patreon. So if you're interested, check it out on Patreon. It's Tim Anderson Horse Training. And if you have any questions for me, Patreon is where I go to first when I start answering comments. I get so many comments on Facebook and YouTube that I can't answer them all. There's hundreds of them every day. There's no way I could answer them all. So when I go have a few minutes to answer comments, Patreon is where I go to first. And depending on the subscription level there, if you decide to subscribe, there is a level where you get a free video lesson every month, and you have access to ask me specific training questions, specific issues with your horse, where I can help point you in the direction to help you and your horse. So that's Tim Anderson Horse Training on Patreon. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below. Until next time, thank you for watching. There, now that was her good direction. Going to the right is a little bit worse, because if you remember, I talked about her poking her left shoulder out when I steered right. I talked about that in a previous video. There, I'm asking for a little more. Head came up. There, I picked up my hands and the head went down. That was a big deal right there. I picked up my hands, her ears went down, broke at the pole. That's what I need. I need more of that. Now when I get ready to step around to the right, it's not as good, because I've still got that left shoulder issue that I'm working with. I want to get it softer, get that left shoulder up. Kind of lost her balance there. Picked up my hands, ears went down, nose came in. I'll take that. That is much better form. If I don't have the correct form, the correct body position, the correct frame, then I'm not going to be able to advance that spin past what it is. The horse needs to be soft and steering soft. Now here, I'm working to the right. You see a little bit of my shoulder issue there. And watch when her head is up, when her head came down, she stepped around better. That was better. That was where that gag bit has helped. Now I'm asking her to step around to her right again. I want to get that left shoulder stepping nice before I'm really going to ask a whole lot. Make sure the shoulder comes and gets soft.